Good evening and welcome to Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right-of-centre viewpoint. Three of us today, we've got Sam.
Hi.
Jonathan.
Hello.
And I'm Steve. A bunch of things to talk about, but first of all, sorry it's been a while since our last podcast. It's election time and we're all really busy because we are, of course, political activists. And you know what political activists do during election time? We drink and sit around and eat pizza. Well, actually, that's not what we do at all, except Jonathan, who does a lot of that. Anyway, we've got a bunch of things to get through, and we've all chosen different things tonight. So the first one is Jonathan's choice. He wanted to have a look at some of the perhaps lesser-known things about the Labour Party manifesto, and he's picked a few that he particularly liked. So first of all, Jonathan, they've pledged 4 new bank holidays celebrating our 4 patron saints. How cool is that?
Up to a point, it's nice having holidays. Except the 4 patron saints, and they obviously don't know their patron saints and realise that...
Well, because they're dead, aren't they?
Well, on the whole, yes, but I mean, the 4 patron saints, you end up with a holiday on the 1st of March, that's going to be sort of semi-winter,
yeah,
and then another one in March, which again will be semi-winter, and then one in April, which is pretty dismal weather usually, and then one on the 30th of November, which again is going to be pretty rubbish weather.
Well, actually, regardless of the weather, you think about it, when it gets to May, you've got a whole bunch of kind of bank holidays one after the other already, haven't you? So now we've got this super cluster of bank holidays. Sam, what do you make of 4 free? It's free, you know, everything's free. What do you think of the 4 free bank holidays?
Well, I think that for businesses it won't be good, but I think that the general public will like it because who doesn't want a paid day off work?
Yeah, I know, but I think people aren't that stupid, are they? I mean,
Yeah,
do you think so? Do you think people really say, oh, it must be free, magic money tree, etc., etc.? I reckon most sensible people know you can't get something for nothing. We all end up paying for it, don't we, Jonathan?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing with this is, as I say, it's four days in winter. I think most people would trade that for 1 day in summer. And the other thing is, if you're having 4 days off, so are your children, which means they're getting a week's less education every year.
Well, it's a fair point, but I don't know. I think people do, as Sam said, people do like the idea of getting more holidays. But my question would be, if another 4, how many does that make in total? I don't know how many there are at the minute. It's quite a few, isn't it, now? With 4 extra, that'd be a lot. How many is the right number where it becomes mad? I mean, why can't we have 365 bank holidays and nobody goes to work? What's wrong with that?
Well, I do that.
Sam, what do you think? 365 days bank holiday, or maybe 364, then we've got 1 day to make all the money that we have to make in the year. What do you think about that?
Sounds pretty stupid.
You're right. It does sound pretty stupid, but I worry a little bit sometimes because Labour are giving away so much stuff. I mean, everything is, I'm going to give you this for free and I'm going to give you that for free. And I'm sure that people mostly think, don't be crazy, where's this money coming from? It's coming from us. But there must be some people, obviously Labour must have a target audience in mind, who just don't realise that they're the ones who end up paying for it, or always think that some mysterious bad guy's going to pay for it. Anyway, moving on to the next one. So it was give everyone full and equal rights from day 1 at work. Part-time, full-time, temporary, permanent, doesn't matter. You get full rights from day 1 to all the stuff that you presently have to wait 2 years for. What do you think of that, Sam?
And that is really stupid because, you know, people take on employees all the time, give them a bit of a chance, and, you know, sometimes after 2 or 3 days it doesn't work out and you need to let them go. And you won't be able to under this policy, so it's just going to lead to less people getting employed, I think.
What do you think, Jonathan?
It's a balanced view, really, because if you've been taken on in a job and you've given up a good job already to go to that job, and then they sack you on day 2, it's, you know, that's patently unfair. On the other hand, if you sort of poll up and then decide that you're going to be off, you know, immediately off sick for 6 months, that seems a bit unfair on the employer.
Well, it's not unfair, though, is it? I mean, we're talking about the basic state contract here. Anybody can negotiate another contract if they want to, can't they? You can go to your employer and negotiate a contract with totally different terms, better terms than the state one, if the 2 parties are prepared to do it. This is the basic state protection they're talking about. What scares me is that employers will just be like, well, I won't take so many people on then. I don't want to take those sort of risks. The consequences of that could be immense. If I take on 20 new staff and they all take paternity leave, maternity leave, sick pay, stress pay or whatever 3 weeks into the job, they've got absolutely nothing they can do about it. And that is such a scare, I think, for a lot of businesses.
It will put businesses off employing people. And
they'll go for more into automation or they'll cut back their jobs or whatever. It's a job killer, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and it also means that you'd be less likely to take on somebody who hasn't got a really, a good record and good references. You certainly wouldn't take on a school leaver on that basis because you don't know their track record.
Well, you're right. I think what this does is it makes employers, perhaps rightly or wrongly, look at a certain type of worker above another type of worker. And maybe people who really need a chance won't get a chance because the employer will say that's just too risky now that they've got all of these rights from day one. And I think isn't that what the left sides always get wrong? They always talk about people having rights, but they forget that somebody has to pay for and provide those rights. And that's actually all of us, because we're all service users as well as service providers, aren't we? All of us are going to those businesses and buying things, and if they have to pass the costs on to us, we pay the price too.
Yeah, but I mean, in a way, that's less of an issue than the issue that is killing off the opportunity for people to either change jobs, because it will put people off, taking people on that they don't know enough about, or starting in a job. So it will have a dampening effect on employment and also a dampening effect on you being able to leave one job and go to another for higher pay.
And on growth, which is what they're counting on to help them pay for all these crazy giveaways they're doing. I mean, Sam, what do you think of this one? They want to ban unpaid internships. Completely ban them, so no right to have an unpaid internship, whether you want to or not.
I don't know how I feel about that really. To be honest with you, I thought we'd taken that one out because I thought we agreed that one was a bit rubbish, but apparently we left it in, so we're talking about that now. I don't know, because I think that people should have a right to have an unpaid internship if they want, but are they abused? I don't know really.
Well, the problem is, right, with all contracts, it's one party and another party making an agreement. Now, when you tell an employer you can't have an unpaid intern, you're also telling the intern you can't work for this person, whether or not you want to, whether or not you're happy with that, whether or not you think, and obviously someone who does an unpaid internship, right, they're not just saying it because they want to give their work for free. They obviously think they're getting something from it. Experience, knowledge, contacts, whatever things they think they're getting. They clearly think they're getting something from it. And you're telling them they no longer have the right to agree that contract.
I'm pretty sure they use a lot of unpaid interns anyway, the Labour Party, so it's pretty hypocritical really.
They have done in the past.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to close down. So what do you think of it, Jonathan?
Well, their actual wording was they want to ban unpaid internships except when they are part of an educational training course because requiring people to work for free is exploitative and wrong. Then you look further down their manifesto and it says that they wish to restore and expand the Union Learning Fund. This was a sort of fund which sort of the government lobbed money into, run by the trade unions, and it goes on. You go onto their website, the Union Learning Fund's website, and it says the fund has helped hundreds of thousands of workers on their learning journey, and with support of over 40,000 dedicated Union Learning reps. Union Learning reps work voluntarily.
Right. I mean,
That's all story, bro.
You've got the Labour Party advocating giving a slab of money to an organisation that uses effectively 40,000 interns.
Yeah, but you've hit the nail on the head, Jonathan. You've hit the nail on the head because what is the difference between an unpaid intern and a volunteer? If they're saying that expecting people to work for free is immoral, then isn't that what every volunteer on earth does?
Yeah, well, yeah.
So are you not immediately doing away with virtually every charity in the country, every charity shop, every charitable organisation, every street litter picking group, everybody who does anything out of the goodness of their heart? You're doing away with all of them if you're saying that giving your work away for free. And if you aren't saying that, then what stops an unpaid intern saying, I'm a volunteer?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is rude. I mean, if you take it, any unpaid work is banned, you end up getting rid of scout leaders, any number of people.
You're right, absolutely, yeah. You end up doing away with so many things. So many helpers of so many kinds just done away with. What about police specials?
They don't get paid, yeah. I mean, the Territorial Army do get paid, but rather bizarrely, the Special Constables don't. They do their work for free.
So, I don't know if they've really thought that one through. What do you think?
Oh, I doubt if they thought it at all.
Right, so the last one is...
it just sounds good, doesn't it? We'll get rid of unpaid internships.
More with the workers' rights stuff. All workers will have the right to flexible working by creating a presumption in favour of flexible working. So, the presumption, at the moment, you can go to your boss and say, I'd like to do flexible working, and they'll say, don't be silly, you're a shift worker and I need you for the 8 to 11 o'clock shift or whatever, 8 till 3 in the morning or whatever it is. Now, you'll be able to say, well, I want to be flexible. I've got a life to lead, and I don't want to follow the rules of your job. What do you make of that, Sam?
Well, I do think it really ties companies' hands because a lot of companies are reliant on specific time slots, so I don't see how they can make it work, really.
I mean, what it is an attack on the idea of a contract in total. Because a contract is two parties agreeing the terms with which they will do business. And Labour are saying, we don't want you to be free to make the terms you want to make, either the employer or the employee, because this could hurt both sides. What they're saying is, we want to decide for you what is best for you. Isn't that what they always do, Jonathan?
Yes, but again, I can see a counter-argument slightly, in as much as a lot of companies don't do flexible working because really they can't be bothered. And a good example of this, I used to work for as an engineering company which was in the middle of nowhere, and because everybody had to be there at 8:30, a place in the middle of nowhere had traffic jams first thing in the morning to get into it, and you know, that was ludicrous because having got there, I virtually didn't speak to anybody the rest of the day, so there was no reason for me to be there at 8:30.
Well, to be fair, you probably didn't know the reason, do you? You probably didn't know why. You don't know what their thinking was behind that. Perhaps it suited them to have those hours because they did something in the other hours. Perhaps they wanted to be able to reach the staff whenever they wanted to. Perhaps they wanted to run the buildings with minimal costs in regards to utilities. You don't know what their reasoning was because you weren't in management there.
They did it that way because they've always done it that way, and that's
you think?
Where no, that is a lot. I mean, I worked in engineering for over 30 years, and for a whole range of different companies, and the biggest resistance to change there is simply inertia.
Yeah, but the problem with the argument, I worked there for over 30 years, is so probably did a number of the managers who held a different view to you. And would say, we've worked in it for 30 years and we think this is better. And, you know, the point I think being that if you are the manager of an engineering company and you want to implement flexible working, knock yourself out.
And obviously you didn't hate it that much if you stayed there for 30 years.
No,
that's true.
I said I worked in engineering for 30 years.
It's just a worry, isn't it? It's a worry that the government thinks they know better than the people who are creating the jobs and doing the work. And indeed the employers, because the employees, many of them are choosing to work in those places, knowing full well when they go in what the terms are. Why do you get the right to agree a contract that you're perfectly happy with, then march in, and because Jeremy Corbyn says so, suddenly you want a different set of terms?
Yes, but companies do vary unilaterally contracts. If
why shouldn't they?
Well, because it's a contract.
Yeah, I do agree with Jonathan there. I've been in places where you start on a job and you agree the contract, and then they change it halfway through. And once it's a job that you're relying on the income for, to then suddenly change your terms, it's a bit.
But they can only do that if the original contract allows them to, which you also agreed.
I worked for 12 months in Germany. When I was in Germany, I had a contract. The contract they gave me was over half an inch thick. It was utterly detailed, and both parties knew that there was no variation between that at all. And that is how it is in Britain. So you didn't have to take
the job, though?
I took the job because it was a good job, and I but the point was I agreed those conditions.
Yes.
And they agreed those conditions, so they couldn't turn around to me and say, actually, we don't want you to do overtime.
But the only reason they can do that in this country is because the contract says they can vary the contract. If the contract is written in stone and allows no variance, you can't vary it, can you?
Well, perhaps there ought to be a move towards, if you're writing a contract of employment, it has to be written in stone and both parties have to agree it.
Well, unless the contract says that it has a break clause or the ability to change, in which case that is part of the contract that's written in stone. Writing it in stone that it's not written in stone, if you like. I mean, it's still, you agree it or you don't. I do think you've got a point. Perhaps people can't read such dense legalese contracts. Perhaps there's an argument for plain English contracts that people can follow.
The problem is most people don't get a contract of employment of any sort whatsoever. And it doesn't state firmly conditions which are important to the employee, like, you're working in, Birmingham. Key to you is not being moved out of Birmingham to somewhere in Manchester. If it's set there in stone in a half-inch thick contract saying you will remain employed in Birmingham, and that's it.
And a lot of these companies, don't say things like that, and they say meet reasonable requests of the business, and then if they move you to a different location, they say, you can go there, so they can avoid paying you redundancy.
That sort of flexible working, though, that sort of flexible terms. people agree to when they sign up to it. People
but
are
I
out there
think
looking for flexible
but
jobs.
I think-
If you write it all in
I
stone,
don't
there'll
think-
be no jobs.
I think you're being a bit naive there, because the problem is...
I'm being naive.
No, I think you're being naive in the sense that, it's difficult, and you've obviously not taken a lot of, recently, maybe in the past, but taken a lot of, lower paid, lower skilled jobs, because a lot of people, you have to take, if you're claiming benefits as an example, you have to take jobs that you're offered, and they often might not be jobs that you necessarily want or you can do or things like that, and you can't just say, you're thinking everyone's in this wonderful scenario where they can just say, oh, this contract doesn't meet my exact specifications, I won't take the job.
I don't think that's fair, and I think it's a bit of a personal comment actually, because that's not what I said at all. So more to the point, I think, if you are living on benefits and somebody offers you a perfectly good job, there's no reason why you... It's an expectation to take it is absolutely fine.
Yeah, okay, maybe the benefits was a bad example, but the general point is, if you are desperate for a job, you haven't got a choice to be choosy. The scenario you're describing is a scenario that you can have if you're, if you don't desperately need a job and you've got time to search and negotiate an exactly perfect contract.
No, because if the argument you're making is that there are lots of people who are desperate for jobs, and you implement a policy that takes jobs away, you're making life harder for them.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you there, and that's why on a number of things I've said I think Labour are wrong. But I'm just saying that the reason that a lot of people, when they say this, it kind of clicks with people and people agree, is because people have often been in situations themselves where they can recognise that, where they've had a contract where they felt like they've been stiffed over by an employer. Because while most employers are good people, there's also a number of ones that are pretty predatory and
that
not
might
good.
be true, but we do have a minimum number of protections for workers already. And part of the point that I'm trying to make to you is, if you layer on the protections so thick that employers do not want to take people on anymore, you cost those people even the chance at this job that you're saying they're desperate for. You're not doing them any favours. You're championing these people, and offering people who are desperate more protections takes away their opportunities for employment and traps them forever in poverty.
Yeah, that's probably... I don't disagree there, but I think the problem is that... I think how it feels is that we've got regulation now in employment, and the regulation in a way helps bigger companies and harms smaller companies because they can't keep up with it, and it also sometimes harms workers. And it's almost over-regulation, because if it was a much easier scenario where you could literally go up to a guy and say, I want a job, and the guy said, okay, I'll pay you, I don't know, £6 an hour or whatever, and you said okay, and you could turn up, and that was literally your informal agreement, and he could get rid of you whenever you wanted and you could leave whenever you wanted, and it was pretty informal, that would be much better than in some ways than the system we've got now. Because sometimes people take things thinking they've got a security that they perhaps don't have.
Yeah, but you see, you're just arguing for less regulation. That's what the case you just made.
Yeah, and I am making a case. The only point I was making, what I'm saying to you is the system that we've got now. The point I'm trying to make, maybe badly, is that the reason when Labour say this to a number of people in the public, it rings bells with them and they think, yeah, this is something I support, is because they have been in situations where they've been stiffed over by an employer, and they don't think it through. They don't think that this, because of over-regulation and other things that has caused this problem. What they think is, this employer's mean, how can I stop them?
You might be right, but the way to put that correct, certainly from our point of view, isn't to say, oh yeah, I agree with that, we should be doing it. It's to make the point that actually less regulation helps. More regulation doesn't. All that more regulation does is cost the employer more, which makes them, like anybody, if every time the cost for something goes up, you think twice about whether you're going to do it. All you're creating is a great case for more automation, as few staff as you can possibly keep, and keeping the staff that you do hire to a particular type of person that you happen to think is more reliable than that.
Yeah, that's true. But what you were suggesting at the start is that people should have to sit there and read an extensive, complex contract.
No, I made the case that maybe a simpler contract is a good thing to argue.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I mean, although I do think you should read your terms of employment, but I accept that sometimes they can be complex.
They only need to be a page. It needs to say how much you get paid, what day you get paid on, what times and days you're expected to work, and what holiday you get.
Yeah, that would be good. So a nice
one
simple,
side of A4.
And legislation that made every employer give a simple, clear, easy to read terms of employment. I'd get behind that. That's good. But Labour aren't suggesting that.
Having worked for a large and huge engineering company, which one particular office they wanted to move, where they simply took everybody's desks away and left them with a phone and someone to monitor the amount of times they went to the toilet, and did nothing all day until they were, wanting to leave. that, people don't look at situations like that and say,
No,
actually,
that's against the law now, Jonathan, because that's constructive dismissal.
well,
But
no,
not
because
if
they're
you've been
still
there for less
being
than 2
paid.
years.
Yeah, well, that's right. But again, the reason that is built in is so that employers can take on short-term people without being layers with so many costs and expenses of rights that they're terrified to give anyone a job. Otherwise, people just won't be employed. Employers will still have to employ some people, but they will keep to the absolute minimum. They'll take no chances, and the sort of people we're trying to help are the people who need the chances. The people who perhaps incorrectly are judged to be less reliable. I mean, they'll go looking for a set, definite type of person, a set ethnicity, a set age, a set gender. They will go looking for a specific type of person who they, in their minds, think is more reliable, probably incorrectly. And if you don't fit that mould, you're stuff out of luck. That's where we're leading to, because they won't take a chance with them.
Yeah, I don't necessarily dispute that, but I think the system does need looking at in the whole, really.
Well, anyway, time to move on, because we've got another one now. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party has maintained its 9-point lead over the opposition Labour Party ahead of Britain's December the 12th election, according to an opinion poll published by YouGov, by The Times and Sky News on Tuesday. That's today. Support for the Conservatives stood at 42%, down 1 point from YouGov's previous poll published on Saturday, while Labour was also down 1 point on 33%. But along with a few other recent polls, you might notice people are talking a little bit about there being a narrowing. At one point there was a much bigger lead than that. It's narrowed a bit as we close into the election, and some people are now suggesting we're in hung Parliament territory. What do you think, Jonathan?
There is this danger, but I'm not convinced it's going to happen.
Informative.
Well, exactly. You said to keep it brief, so I'm keeping it brief.
There's a time for everything, I suppose. Sam?
So I spoke to Chris Bowden about this. No one of you on this podcast will know him, but he's a fellow that wants to come on the podcast one time. But
There's
I don't know
nothing
if we know
better
him.
than naming people that nobody knows on a podcast. Well done, Sam. That's good.
Yeah, but anyway, people can look forward to the day when he explains things in a more detailed and boring way than Jonathan. Anyway.
If you think that's a lie, people who are listening to this podcast, but I can assure you it is not. Carry on, Sam.
But anyway, I mean that in a jovial way. Very nice chap. Anyway, what he was saying was that people that think it's going to be a hung... I've got to remember this. People that think it's a hung parliament don't understand polls, because the way that the boundaries are means that Labour for there to be a Labour government, Labour would have to be 10 points ahead in the polls, whereas for the Conservatives to have a majority, they only need to be six points ahead in the polls. So he thinks that there's no chance of a Labour government. There's only a 20% chance of a hung parliament, and it's 80% chance of a Conservative majority. So take that to the bank.
All right. Well, I mean, Chris Bowden's words, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely. I'm sure you can write them in stone. I mean, I actually think we're heading for a Conservative win as well. But I think what he forgot is that there's always a 3% margin of error. So presume that 3%...
I bet if he's listening to this now, he's going to be like...
Assume there's a 3% margin of error, and that takes
I don't remember saying that. Yeah.
that takes your 10% lead down to a 7% point.
But we only need
lead.
6%.
That's right, so we're within 1%, so we only have to have one more point of slippage. And as everybody knows, as you close in on an election, quite often the polls narrow, because people who were previously flirting with voting for more unusual parties, they all start to go, no, I want to pack a winner,
Pack a winner.
Pack a winner.
He said pack a winner.
And so they start, and it always happens, doesn't it? You always see that the smaller parties suffer as you close in on the election. And I suspect, but you've seen the Brexit Party, I think, drop to 2% or something today, and the Lib Dems are down as well. Greens absolutely nowhere. My feeling is it might tighten a little bit more, but I still think there's a bunch of quiet Conservatives out there who are looking at Jeremy Corbyn's policies and going, this guy is mad. That's what I think. I think enough people are looking at those policies and just thinking, you must be mad if you think we believe that 200 billion pounds of spending out of nowhere could just be conjured from thin air. Don't you? What do you think? Do you think people believe it, Jonathan?
I think we want 3 unicorns.
I'm not sure that they necessarily believe it, but on the other hand, there are a lot of people out there who just wouldn't vote Conservative to save their life. So,
I don't know. There's been quite a lot of stories about Labour voters in the north saying, well, I've never voted Labour all my life, but I'm voting Conservative this time because don't like Corbyn or want Brexit, or I mean those seem to be the big two, don't it? People really don't like Corbyn and people really do want Brexit, and you've got almost a perfect storm here, don't you think?
Well, there was an interesting woman on Radio 4 who sort of interviewed who'd always voted Labour, And she said, I read the Labour Party manifesto and I shall be voting Conservative for the first time in my life. So, it's,
Make of that what you will.
I recommend to everyone, read the Labour Party manifesto. It's full of all sorts of goodies.
All right, next item on our list. Donald Trump. Donald Trump had said he would not be interested in putting Britain's National Health Service, NHS, on the table during trade talks with the UK, even if it was handed to him on a silver platter. Trump, who is in London for a NATO summit, said, "We have absolutely nothing to do with the NHS and we wouldn't want to. If you handed it to us on a silver platter, we'd want nothing to do with it." So lots of repeated words there, as is normal with Donald Trump. I think that's pretty clear though, but what do you make of it, Sam?
I think he's deliberately playing it safe because he doesn't want Boris to be associated with him, really.
Well,
Because
he
he
didn't
knows
say
that
anything
he's
about
not
Boris.
popular. That's the point.
So you think he does want to buy the NHS?
No, I don't think he wants to buy the NHS. Don't be like a massive lefty and try and twist my words.
Well, I did ask you and you didn't say what do you
No,
think,
the
John?
point I'm making is that he doesn't want to buy the NHS, but he does like Boris. It's no secret. He doesn't like Jeremy Corbyn. He's not going to like a socialist, is he? But he knows. He's not a stupid man. He knows if he's like, oh yeah, Boris is a really good guy, everyone's going to twist it and say, oh, Trump supports him and Trump's evil. He's not, he's going to keep...
See, I understand what's happened here now, you see. Because when we rehearsed, when we talked about what we were going to talk about today, there was a longer version of this quote that included Boris being talked about. But the one I just read had no mention of Boris, but you were thinking of the original and not the one I read, I think. Because there's no mention in this, what I've just said about Boris at all.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying Trump didn't mention Boris.
But he was only asked about the NHS.
Oh.
Well, the more obvious question is, why would anyone want to buy the NHS? I mean, if I was offered the NHS, I would want a load of free money with it, and we're talking almost infinite amounts, because what you've bought with you buying the NHS is something that is going to be a total loss maker to you.
Yeah,
giving free everything away free is not a business model.
The NHS is absolutely lovely, and we all love it. Everyone,
Yeah,
all British people love it, but I think nobody's going to pretend it's a giant money earner.
No. I mean, why would anyone want to buy it?
But I think what he's really suggesting is that more bits of it will be privatised, more bits of the NHS will... But there's quite a lot of it already. Outside companies come in, they do the cleaning. Sometimes companies do operations, don't they? Some of the clinics are run by... All, as we've said before, all GPs are private. Yeah. So quite large chunks... dentists, lots of dentists. So quite a lot of the chunks of the NHS are already.
Well, not only that, this idea that the NHS must be a monopoly supplier is all very well until you point out to someone that, if their favourite footballer twists his ankles, according to Labour, what should happen, he should go on the NHS waiting list and wait to be dealt with, not sent to private medicine to have a physiotherapist look at it and have money spent on it. He'll be out for the season, mate, because he will be on a waiting list. If you cut your finger, you're not supposed to put your plaster on it, which you have bought from the chemist, which is private medicine, let me remind you. You are supposed to turn up at A&E and they put the plaster on.
That's true. People forget that, because when they go, you often see these posts saying if you stop buying aspirin and paracetamol and ibuprofen, if you stop getting them on the NHS and just bought them yourself for 40p or whatever some of these things are in Tesco, if you did that, then you would save the NHS a fortune because they pay lots more for it. But they are then forgetting that what they've just made a case for is private interest in the NHS.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know. I think Labour have, since I was a child, thought the NHS was the magic bullet topic for them when it comes to elections. But recent polls have suggested more people now trust Boris for the NHS than Corbyn. That's what you get when you go beyond your platitudes and you start promising more than everybody knows you've got. People just start thinking you're a liar. Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting one, Sam. This was Sam's suggestion earlier. So, the son of Diane Abbott, the Shadow Home Secretary, has been arrested for biting a police officer on Whitehall on Friday. He was charged in Westminster Magistrates Court yesterday. Cambridge-educated James was bailed over to appear in Central London Magistrates Court on Friday. The incident happened outside the Foreign Office, from where he was sacked from his Rome Embassy job in June. This was on the Guido Fawkes website, and he says Guido understands Abbott has pulled out of a TV debate tomorrow. She has been subbed in for by the Shadow Policing Minister, Louise Haigh. So, Bitey Abbott, what do you think, Sam?
Well, I think that's why she's pulled out. She must be pretty embarrassed. I mean, she's supposed to be the shadow, person in charge of law and order, and her son's just gone to be a police officer. Not just anyone, a police officer. So.
How do you bite a police? I mean,
I was going to say,
I can see how you punch one or kick one, but how do you get close enough to bite one? Did he sneak up behind him and like on his neck?
Because my guess is he's kind of like the police officer's gone to restrain him or push him away, and he's bitten his arm or something.
I mean, it's a bit girly, isn't it? Sorry, girls. I'm not suggesting you all bite people, but all I'm saying is I would have sort of suggested something a bit more. I don't know. Perhaps I'm being too old-fashioned.
Okay, boomer.
What do you think, Jonathan?
well, yeah. Look, apart from which, sort of, depending. I mean, with HIV and these things, it could be biting someone could be attempted murder. So I mean, it
Only if they had HIV though.
yeah, but you don't know that. That's the point. If someone bites you, you don't know.
Sorry, Jonathan, are you saying that the son of Diane Abbott has got HIV and is trying to
I've no idea.
trying to infect police officers with it?
I've no idea.
Oh dear. So he's sneaking around and just savage biting them? I mean, we don't know the background to this story, so we don't really know what happened. And perhaps he had a very good reason for biting a police officer outside wherever it was.
Well, yeah, I mean, Diane Abbott's really. I mean, you got to feel for her. This is you're supposedly a time gone by a shadow Home Secretary, and then you have a child who's
a biter, vampire.
Yeah, and I mean, he's an adult. He's not. You could understand if he was a 5-year-old and he'd bitten a policeman. Even then, it's a bit.
I've heard right wingers say in the past that all lefties are vampires, but this almost proves the proof is in the pudding, as they say. No, but we don't know the background.
The other thing about it is so incredibly stupid because it's so easy to prove. One, match the teeth marks.
I don't think when he
match the DNA.
Before he bit, he probably wasn't like, I wonder if this attack I've chosen is more likely to catch me out than another. I don't think that.
No, but I mean, if you want to design an attack to guarantee you being caught. I think biting someone, when leaving teeth marks behind and DNA is, pretty,
Sam, can you think of
dense.
an attack more likely to get you caught than a bite? You can't, can you?
Oh, there will be one. Let me think of one.
Take your time. It's definitely an audio medium, so it's great for these long periods of silence.
Yeah.
You've got nothing.
Well, it must be.
What about if you chained yourself to someone?
What's more identifiable? Yeah, you chained yourself to someone.
I'm not sure that's an attack,
No,
though. That's
I've
more
got-
of a restraint.
I've got one, but it's a bit rude.
All right, probably best not do it then.
No, I think we'll
Yeah,
pass on that.
We'll steer clear of that one before you get
It
yourself in
involves some
trouble.
sort of sexual fluids. That's all I'm saying.
Oh dear God! No, well, none of us are suggesting that Diane Abbott's son has done anything involving sexual fluids with anyone, so don't worry about that. All right, moving on to rashly moving on to number 5. A new Tory fundraiser drive is targeting members and supporters who have yet to donate to the Conservatives' campaign. The email tells recipients that over the last 12 months, Labour have raised nearly 13 million from donations alone, and now the polls are tightening, so urgently need your help to match Corbyn's war chest. The email, sent by co-chairman of the party, Ben Elliott, highlights members and supporters who have not contributed to the election fighting fund in an attempt to pressure them into giving £5 or £10 in the final days of the campaign. It's late-stage fundraising emails to target supporters who have already donated. The Tories are pulling out all the stops, says this report, following Labour's massive union cash injection. So it's upset a few Conservatives, hasn't it, Sam? Because they think the approach was a little bit rude. Is that fair?
I think so. It was pretty brash, really.
Did you get it?
I got it 3 times. 3 times, and it kind of just shows your little name and says, yet to donate. So it's quite, it is quite abrasive, and also it's a bit embarrassing because they're asking you for like a £5. I think we're sunk to desperation if we're chasing people for £5.
It's all about micro donations now, isn't it? Ever since Trump did it, they've all got their heads set on, instead of large single donators, they all want these micro donations that add up in total. What do you think, Jonathan? Did you get it?
Well, bear in mind, I probably haven't put my email on for at least a week, so because I only switch on the email when I know someone sent me an email I want to see.
Come on, Sam.
What about it?
Why aren't you saying OK Boomer to him? You OK Boomered me. He hasn't looked at his email in a
because
week.
he's not a boomer, he's like a dinosaur. They don't have an OK dinosaur insult.
I'm not a boomer, I'm Generation X.
They don't have like an OK dinosaur insult.
No, I mean,
even my granddad, who's like in his 70s, uses the internet. For emails
I use it. I mean, if you ring me up and
you
say
can even send a text message, which is more than you can do.
When Jonathan logs onto the internet, it's like over the phone.
How did you know that? I mean, the thing is, if someone wants to give you some information, all they've got to do is ring you up and say, I'm sending you an email. And then you get it, and you ring them back and say, yes, I've got your email. What's the
Right, so
problem?
you want two forms of communication when they could have either A, just spoken to you on the phone, or B, just sent the email that you've read without them notifying
yeah, but sending you a graph is a bit difficult by doing it verbally, isn't it?
I must admit, I've got thick skin
Okay,
about this sort of thing. I've got thick skin about it, but I got the email, and even I thought, that's a bit rude. I mean, the tone of it was wrong. You know, it should have been... It was like it was trying to shame you into giving,
it was.
rather than just saying, look, please help. And I guess that they must have done some sort of focus group and decided this was more likely to work, and maybe it did. But I think it also upset a few people.
They could have just done it a bit fun, like, look, I know you guys are all Christmas shopping and you haven't got a lot of Christmas presents, but did you know for the price of a coffee, you know, you can donate to the Conservatives, we really need all your money.
Where do you pay a fiver for a coffee?
In Costa it's like $3.50.
Well, that's not a fiver.
Yeah, but nearly a fiver.
It's like Corbyn maths.
No, but if you spend $3.50, $1.50 doesn't last long, does it?
That's another half a coffee, yeah.
Or they could have said that, like, because you know, your bank does a thing where if it's called Save the Change, where every time you buy something for $5.99 or $4.99, it puts the penny in your savings account. It rounds up basically to whole numbers. So they could do an app.
That is the
like,
stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Why?
Well, I mean, that's no different to my penny jar, right? Now, I've been putting money in my penny jar for, I don't know, 3 years. And if I went and cashed it up now, there's not even 80 quid in it.
Yeah, but it rounds up anything to the nearest. So, say, for example, you spent like...
That's like the plot of Superman
£106.20. It rounds up the 80 pence.
That's what he did, wasn't it? In one of the Superman movies, the bad guy or...
Don't ask Jonathan, he's not seen any movies. He doesn't even know
A
movies
Superman movie, yeah.
You'll believe a man can fly, Jonathan. If you believe that Labour have got that sort of money.
I mean, why are they still producing? I thought he'd injured his back or something.
That was like one actor.
Was it? Oh, right.
Yeah, you can have multiple actors play a part, you know.
Well,
I mean, Christopher Reeves did get really injured, and I think paralysed, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And very sadly, but that doesn't mean he's the only actor who can ever play Superman. Although I've got to say, I'm no fan of this new dark Superman. I much prefer the Christopher Reeves version. That's real Superman right there.
You'll be telling me next they've replaced Sean Connery on the.
Well, I don't consider anything after Sean Connery real Bond. So.
Yeah. Oh right.
He is the sexiest Bond.
But I can't comment on who the sexiest is. But I think it's like Doctor Who. You like the Bond you grew up with. You like the Doctor Who you grew up with. That's why for me, Tom Baker is Doctor Who and Roger Moore is Bond. And other people feel differently.
Sean Connery's Bond.
Sean Connery, I think. Yeah.
There you go.
I like his voice, I think. That's why. He's got a nice voice, isn't he? Do you know who I think would have made a good Bond, though? He's also got a really sexy voice. Tom Jones.
Well, he could have made a musical Bond.
Exactly. Now you're thinking about it.
Anyway, so I think that's pretty much tied us up for tonight. We have been Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right of centre viewpoint. It's been Sam.
Bye.
It's been Jonathan.
Hello.
I've been Steve. And we will talk to you soon.